All right. Welcome to the very first webinar, Regrid webinar of the year. And we have exciting news today. And to share this news, joining me today is Jerry Paffendorf, our CEO and co-founder, and Nick Downer, our VP of software. Hey, guys.
Hey, what's up, Sana? Hey, Nick.
Big day.
It's a big day. It's a fun day. It feels like a satisfying day. It's a great day to launch a new app. So I'm glad we did that. Or a
That's right.
significantly updated app.
Updated app, yes. So what did we announce today? We announced the launch of our updated Regrid Property App, our mobile app. Where it's not new, it's been there, but it looked like a shiny new app because a lot of work went into it. It's a massive update from the look and feel, from UX design to features, and just what it stands for. So, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, is just to set the stage and tee this up for everyone joining us live. And thank you so much for joining us live. Is we're going to be talking about the update, what got updated, what we added to it, and why did we do it, and we'll do a little demo in between, and then we'll leave some room for questions at the end, if that sounds good to everyone.
Sounds great. And for anyone just kind of wondering what we're talking about, go to regrid.com/app.
Yes.
And you can see what we're talking about.
Yeah. All right, there you go. Right there, the link is up there. So Nick or Jerry, if you want to get started on what's going in today's update.
Well, this is going to be fun because this conversation is mostly based on just like enthusiasm. There's a lot of fun stuff to talk about. Nick, I know we have kind of a shared history with this app too. I think, talking about the present and the future, it's kind of fun to give some context. When we originally developed this app, it was about 10 years ago. And we had a history of trying to make land and property information very accessible in Detroit and then regionally. But when we first built the mobile app, it was very much to help community members go out to document properties in a very coordinated fashion. So it was pictures of properties, notes about properties. And the people that used it tended to be fairly organized. And that's actually how we first met, Nick, was we did a property survey. You all had a citywide survey of Cleveland going on. And so we connected because the app was a good solution for that. And so that kind of shared history was like big coordinated projects. And then over time, it just became a convenient way to look stuff up. Right? It's just a great tool for property lookups. But it was still sort of oriented for like big, large, collective, this is a real project to get something done. And what we've done here, the big bite that we've taken, is kind of kept the best of what we've built over time, but then oriented it in a much more popular, much more interesting, much more convenient direction. And with that, Nick, I'll pass it over to you because I can just keep going. I'm kind of excited about all this stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. It is interesting to think about the arc of this, right? Because in many ways, I think about it paralleling Regrid as a whole, sort of like the company and what's happened over time, right? Because, as you said, totally accurately, right? Like started out as a survey tool. Like really the app was just like, how do I collect this data? But then, like it becomes really apparent that one of the main values that it actually provides to people is like, you can look up property data, right? And as we expanded throughout the country, it becomes more and more valuable to the point where now, right? Like you can have this app on your phone and you can go, 99% of the population, 99.9 or whatever the current stat is. And you can like look at all this information, right? And we want to make sure that was really like a core part of this. But, there's this also sort of like longer arc of like, what do people want to be able to do with the app? And, a lot of people don't have this need to do like a big centralized survey anymore, right? Like certainly people do. And we certainly want to support those folks who do it. So
and we still do. Yeah.
Right. Totally are. And we'll talk about like how we like reconciled that in this current version. But it also became apparent that there are like a bunch of people who use this app and never touch a survey, right? Like they're using it for other things. They have other needs. Yep. And so we were like, all right, well, let's just, we'll make this look more beautiful. We'll deal with that sort of like functional thing that we're seeing. And we'll also like set up a platform where we can build other stuff on top that we think people want to see and interact with.
And if I can riff on that, Nick, you're kind of making me thinking of like, if there were 3 stages, it sort of works like this. There was like the stage where it was like very much like a very functional tool for these large scale field surveys. And then it became a really convenient tool for like pressing buttons to look stuff up on the go. Right. And I think the realization over time, and this came both from customers and users, but I think also like what's fun is like the future path kind of comes from our own wants, needs, and curiosities just as people. And that's really fun because then you just kind of get to listen to yourself about what you want. And I think one realization is like, as cool as it is to press buttons to look up property information, even though that touches a lot more people might want to do that at some point, you really want an app that like you don't have to use all the time for it to be insightful to you. And so you'll see that in some of the big features like following, right? It's not the only feature like this that we're adding, but this ability to follow your house, properties you care about, the neighborhood you live in, the city you live in, and then have the app come to you to tell you when there's something new is really moving from like, I don't know, sometimes I think about this in like, you can cut me off here anytime, but I think of this as like a coffee shop or a bar or meeting somebody conversation, and they're like, what do you do? And you talk about Regrid, you talk about, we've got this nationwide data set, people license it for projects and their businesses, but we also have this really cool mobile app, and they're like, oh, what's the mobile app do? And it's like, oh, you can press the buttons in it to like look up property ownership. And there's always this moment people get like, they're interested in it, but then it's like, I'll get back to it when I need to press buttons to look something up. And it's like, shoot, what can we do to make it something where like, all you need to do is download it, subscribe, and then the app begins to feed you these insights without you doing any work. And that feels like sort of like the third stage of just getting smarter, easier to use. The app works for you. It's not you needing to be a seagull, you know, pecking for your morsels.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Sana.
No, I was just going to say it kind of goes with our messaging, you know, and that actually came from our customers, you know, connect with land. You know, we've realized that our app was the tool for looking up properties. People would do it all the time. But we also would get, you know, customers reaching out to us saying, do you know when this got updated? When is this county getting updated? There's an interest to want to be in the know for your geographies, your places. And some of us care about the place we live in. Some of us have, you know, other people in other places, or if we actually work in this field, we actually want to know about a lot more geographies, a lot more properties. And that's how following, you know, came to be, is like we realized that people want to be in the know, and we update our data frequently, but there might be an easier way for us to communicate that through the app, so they don't have to keep asking us or wondering about it. We'll just make that easy for them.
Yeah, and I think it's all part of this broader push, right? Which is like, you know, it's one thing to just like provide current point in time property information across the thing, right? And do the like seagull hunt and peck and like see one thing at a time. And that's like all fine and it's important. And many people find that valuable, right? Not discounting it. But, you know, like the conversations that we've been having, the future really feels a lot more, especially on this, like the broad-based populist side of this, is like, how do you package that up, right? Like whether that's signing up to receive passively updates so you don't have to go back and check when we update, or whether that's packaging some of the other stuff that we currently do into more user-friendly formats. So, right, you can get served up like, oh, click one button and see all the properties that are worth more than X amount, right? Or like any of these types of things that we can do to tell a story with the data is much more interesting to people often than just like a cut and dry, like, yeah, you can look this property up on here.
Yeah.
So to add on to that too, I think one thing, and we don't, you've not really like kind of screened this yet, but I think it's important for people to note, like, we've added this new dimension to the app, which is a page about the place that you're in. So it's not just like pulling up a property, but it's like, okay, I'm in Calumet, Sahana's in Southeast Michigan, Nick is in Cleveland. It's like, wherever you're looking at, you can now pull up information about that municipality, the city, the town that you're in. And we pull in stuff from our own data, of course, but also descriptions from Wikipedia. We have an integration with native land to show indigenous nations and tribal ranges. And we're going to be adding more like that too. It's not just the, I love parcel data, obviously, I love the land data, but that needs to be supplemented in an app like this with additional context.
Yeah.
And to do that, we can just pull more stuff in. And so that pathway of making it, it's always been awesomely nerdy, right? Yeah. It's importantly nerdy, but I think we're making it less nerdy in a really cool way too, where it's like, now this is more stuff about the place in the history, in the context, as well as like the raw facts, which are also very important and interesting, but they come together in this update.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like we've been adding context across the board in all of our other products, that's exactly what we did here, is adding location context on top of just looking up parcels, and then you see all the attributes that we have for that parcel. So let's not forget that it's not just shapes and looking up parcels and owner information. We have all the 120 attributes that we have for our parcel information everywhere across the nation. You can look at land use, and then additional location context like this, and then be in the know. You can follow properties, you can follow places, and then when it gets updated, you can go back and see for all the changes that happen there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we've still done too. One thing I'll say too is we've always had an ethos of just like accessibility for this kind of information, and people will continue to see that here. So like anybody can download the app, get right into it. If you stick with the app, we have a free starter account. So it's an account level called Starter, and you can keep using that to look up property information. And then if you want to level up to the pro account, you do get access to some of these additional features, but we've tried to just make it all really make sense, right? Try to have the right price on stuff, also have the right freeness and accessibility there, because it is something that I think, I mean, it can sound a little something, but it's like there's room to just make people more land conscious than usual, and all the things that means.
Yeah.
Who owns this stuff? Where can I go? What's happening in my community? How's land being used? That always feels like, we've talked about this kind of stuff a lot. I keep saying like land is more than real estate. You know what I mean? I think when people think about these apps, sometimes it makes sense to put us into a real estate category. And Lord knows we serve people working in real estate, and we like doing it. The information is really important to real estate. But I think what we're trying to do is expand the consciousness and the interestingness of like land not only being that.
No.
Right? It has history, it has meaning, it has uses, it has possibilities, and it has values that are outside of what's the sale price and what's the assessment. You'll find that stuff there too, but you'll find more. So I think it'll kind of scratch the itches of more people who are like, cool, I just don't do real estate stuff. It's like, do you hike? Do you care? Do you plan? Do you community garden? Do you like to know what changes in your community? Have you been curious about these things? Like there's just more of that there that I think is good.
Yeah, and more to come. Can I do a quick show and tell for you?
Yeah, let's do a show and tell.
Okay. All right. Well, I feel like it's always a nightmare scenario to do like a live screen share from a phone while you're also on a computer. So I have assembled some screenshots instead. Let's see.
Oh, you're not gonna do an awkward demo with your phone like this?
No, I thought about it. But I felt like our users deserve more, Sahana. So, okay, can you guys see this? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to do like a lightning tour here, and I want to, I think Sahana, we built in some time for questions, so feel free to. We can dive back into this later, but basically like the long arc. We've already talked about some of the narrative side of this, right? But so I figured I would start on this first screen, which is just showing sort of like I zoomed out far enough that we would just be able to look at the UI pretty quickly. And so here, basically, we reworked this. I'm not going to dwell on everything, but I feel like it's important to note that one of the things we were doing when we started out with this is like, how can we really just like minimize and make it feel as simple and clean as possible? I feel like, there's really like a value to just being able to sort of like immediately understand sort of like what's happening in an app without having too many things thrown at you. So we've moved a few things around, but nothing crazy. We kept the toolbar approximately where it was. The search is now up top, and you can get to your menu from the top left, but nothing mind-blowing there. The nice thing here is like we built this foundation so we can, this little icon here gets you to this tools panel. And we had users who were consistently like, oh man, I really wish you guys had some kind of measure tool. So we actually added that immediately pre-release, the version before this one, but it's here again. And we've also sort of allowed you to define a custom area that you can follow, as well as sort of get like a lat long coordinate. But there's also room to grow in here, right? So other tools, as users get in touch, we can sort of support that easily.
That's what I was going to say, Nick. Can I jump in for 1 second just to say, I think like a big focus here, because I'll put it this way, like the app has worked well for a while, and we've supported the way that it's worked and the way people have liked it. But because of its origins, it had felt a little bit claustrophobic sometimes, and a little bit like you were sort of getting the value out of it that you wanted while having features around you that maybe you didn't, participate in. And we fully know that can just feel wrong. You don't want your user experience to be stressful in any way. Like there's features I'm seeing that I'm not using. So we stripped those out, put them in the right places. And then like Nick said, I think with the tools that we have in here now, this gives us a great area to continue to add additional complementary tools, right? I mean, this is some fairly basic, but very common things we have in here, the measuring areas, the drawing areas, the putting a pin and getting your lat long. But this is sort of our area to kind of add like micro apps within the app and have it all like contained really nicely. So forgive me, Nick. I just want to. My brain can't help. I just I'm loving it. So.
That's perfect. And yeah, exactly right. So like more to come. And I think that's like the refrain for a lot of these things. We'll get to the places page in a minute, but it's the same on that front, right? Which is like we've done a couple things, but we're really planning to do more there and really make it richer. So, the core functionality that many of our users come to us for, right, is the actual to see the property boundaries, to pull up the information. So we did some reworking of how this works. There's a little bit of a swipey action now instead of the setup we had previously. But most of the stuff is the same. We also changed up sort of what we show you on this, what we call the parcel preview, based on basically what users wanted most, right? Like people were asking us for. So that's, pretty much the same, but I think you'll like it better than what was previous. Similarly,
it's hopeful. It used to kind of overtake you a little bit.
Yeah.
And now
Exactly.
you no longer lose like the connection to the map. It's much more intuitive as far as getting into and out of things.
Yeah, it feels way better.
Efficient use of the real. No, I was going to say this new design is a more efficient use of the real estate. Depending on, regardless of the screen size, which worked out very well.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like it's a really trendy phrase to use the term like buttery to describe the experience of using like an app when it's smooth and nice. But I'll hop on the bandwagon here. I feel like it is more buttery than previously. Similarly, so speaking of buttery, right? Like now you can just swipe up the card to pull up the whole information and scroll through it, which I think is exponentially better than the experience previously. And then a couple other things in here. So this is the following tab. So when you follow properties or areas, they show up in this following tab. There's going to be more here that we'll do with this as well, but the core concept is pretty solid. And I think really compelling, right? Like we had a feature that we were calling bookmarking, which was sort of like the ancestor to this.
Yeah.
Which really comes out of like hearing from users, like, I really want to tag properties. I really want to be able to do things with them. I want to have a list of them, but I don't want to go through the trouble, right, of like creating a whole survey. It's not that systematic. I just want to be able to be like, this property, I want to remember it, right? And so, there's that element, right? Like the list creation. And then there's also all this stuff that we're going to be, we have some now and we're going to be building out a lot more in the future of like, once you have that list, like, what do you want to know, right? Like, what can we serve up to you based on what we know about the property?
Yeah.
And Nick, can I riff on that? If you can scroll back over just like half a, that one screen to the left there, perfect. That green follow button at the bottom, this is pretty ubiquitous throughout the app right now because in this notion of finding properties and places you care about and then getting notified about what's changed as soon as we know, you'll find this on every individual property. You'll also find it on every city that you find. And we'll get to the places page on here soon because you also have access to the city or the town or the village that you're in. Everything now has this follow function to it. It's a really, really cool experience. So that follow page that you see Cleveland in and some properties up there, every time you tap that button, you're then going to get notified when information about it has changed. And you'll see when you get the notifications and the emails, and we'll still keep refining this over time, like getting better at like pointing out exactly what has changed, like from this to that. It's super cool. It's super convenient. And the list of your followed properties just creates like an awesome menu to get back to them. So it has sort of like a dual fold thing. It's a really good experience to like, oh, I want to remember this place, and then just be able to find and tap it to go back on the map. But then also to get fed this information when things change. And it's just a really core part of this new experience. So you'll see that everywhere. You'll get used to that green button and building out your following list.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you. That's totally right. And it's exciting, it's really fun to be able to sort of like setting something up like this and then feel really good about it when it goes out. So, those of you who update, I'm sure you'll see the same. Okay, and then I'll do two more points, and then I'll stop and get back to the sort of group format. So the first one is just like, so this screenshot here, I mostly pulled because going back to our roots and our surveying setup, when we were looking at, I'll go quickly back to this screen, right, to show just sort of the UI. You'll remember in the older versions, there was a big bar up at the top here that was basically like what we would call like a project selector bar, meaning you could choose between your surveys. That's super important for surveying use cases. It is not at all important for everybody else, right? And so one of the things that we
For others, you could dub it the confusion bar.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like everyone else who is not surveying, it's like, what the heck is this? So we were like, okay, we got to fix that, right? Like that's valuable real estate. We want to make sure people feel better. So now that's under this menu icon. So if you tap that menu, the three lines here, it'll pull up to this page, which is sort of your account page, but there's also this toggle you can just turn on if you are a surveyor and you want to be in survey mode. And from there you can tap and select and do all the project selection stuff. but you know where to go if you're a surveyor. And if you're not a surveyor, right, like you don't need to be like, what the heck is this thing taking up prominent space? So I feel like that was a good way to figure that out, problem solving wise. And then finally, before I stop here, Jerry nodded to sort of like we're pulling in from other sources and linking out and, making it so that, in addition to our granular parcel level data, there's also information about places flowing in here.
Right.
So I pulled up an example here. So basically the top here is like a Wikipedia thing where you can jump over to Wikipedia. And the bottom thing here is native lands. And so if you tap on a given place, you pull up this card, you can see some basic stats, but then you also have these little sections that take you out and provide data from other places. And I think that's, like Jerry was saying, right? Like that to me feels like the future in some ways, being able to pull in information that's relevant to you, the user of Regrid, the property tool. But, the amount of things that are collected by other people that are fascinating and useful is huge, right? So having this vehicle where you can actually link out to it and sort of understand more about the world around you feels really key in some of the ways that we sort of want users to be feeling and sort of like using the tool going forward.
Yep, and I'll to riff on that too. I mean, this is an area where I think we really want to hear from people too about what third-party and outside data sources. So, like, we've definitely got a list going internally where it's like, okay, like how, like if people are interested in more real estate stuff, like why not link right out to Zillow and or similar in places like this? We can do more on history of places. We can do more with census. We can do more with lots of things that exist out there that we can just pin back to a geography. And I'll point out too, like I know we're not showing the app in action there, but when you use it, when you just sort of like, swipe around the country, that place that you're centered on is going to be right at the top of the screen. Tap that place, because I found myself using the app just purely to sort of like surf Wikipedia in a really fast and convenient way, where I can say from personal experience, like I've learned more about the places in my like mega region, like stuff like, around where I'm like, what is that town? What is that? Because these are things, Google Maps doesn't tell you this stuff. Other sites don't tell you this stuff, all great services, but there's a particular flavor that we're offering, which does feel like its own category for understanding more about place and land. And it's really cool. It's awesome the way it's so dynamic and how you can quickly pull that stuff up without needing to do a bunch of searches or filters for it.
Yeah.
All right, we're seeing some questions. Please keep them coming. We'll be here for a few more minutes for questions. But the one question from Mikhail that, are these changes only for the app? What changes have been made to the web? I think that's a perfect segue for us to address the web property app. So if you want to take that, Nick.
Yeah. So on one hand, yes, this specific launch is app-centric. We really wanted to sort of retool the app and use it as a vehicle for this following. We really think it was...
Mobile app. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, the mobile app. Good distinction. We really wanted to make sure that like we were setting ourselves up for success in the future to get out to a more broader popular audience with the mobile app, specifically around like taking advantage of the fact that all phones have this sort of GPS function, right? Like you can locate yourself in space super easily. But it's also worth noting that this stuff has also been made. We've set it up so that there are parallel functions on the website. So if you're on the website and you're signed in there, you can see the following tab, right? So all that stuff will work in parallel. And also, for those who maybe haven't used both or use one and not the other or whatever, so the app is really designed to be slick and sort of like focused on your location and what you can see around you. And the website sort of is built to cater a little bit more to audiences who are looking to work with property data, right? So we have like a filter tool so that you can narrow down properties of interest, and the style tool to color code, and all those types of mapping tools that are available on the website side. So one subscription gets you access to both. In this case, we are focused primarily on the mobile app, but that's not to say that we don't have interesting things cooking on both sides of the house.
Yeah, I'll riff on that too, because as you can imagine, I mean, this could be its own conversation, which is fun to share with other people too. Like, because we go through these design exercises of like, okay, the website can do different things because there's more space on it, right? And the mobile app, like Nick said, it's a smaller real estate, which is a good creative constraint, but it's smaller. It was more location aware. right? Like it knows where you are. You can do different kinds of things with spatial awareness and proximity notifications and just taking advantage of that GPS being a part of it. But what we didn't want to do is have two different like app products, right? That was a really big distinction, is that we want to have the Regrid Property App. There's a mobile way to get to it, a mobile phone way to get to it, and then there's the web way to get to it. And the web is going to have some additional features to it, but one account gets you into everything. We call everything the Regrid Property App, but then we do talk about the mobile app and the web app. And so they're already conjoined. You'll see more or less in one or the other. And then over time, it's a great space for us to play with. It's like, how do we keep the web app still simple, but then let it do some more cool things when it comes to searching and map making and stuff like that. So,
yeah. And Chris had a comment. I thought it was about the app, but thank you, Chris, for the feedback. We appreciate it. Chris says the app looks fantastic.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, we thought we had, as with any rollout, good Lord, those who've not done, worked on mobile app development, it's such a funny world. Not only do you have Apple and Android, but then you have every flavor of like operating system and phones, relatively from the 1970s, and people trying to run iOS on a block of wood. And so, there's some things that may be ironed out in the days ahead, but everything we've heard so far, people are having a great experience. And I think Sahana was referencing, we had some people say it's a black screen, and for some reason it was centering them like in big bodies of water. So it was like, hit your GPS if that happens. So yeah, all normal stuff.
Speaking of which, I think, we want to hear from you. We've been getting some really good feedback all day. We want to continue hearing, because all of that goes into future iterations. So feel free to email us at help@. Help@ would be the best one, right, Nick?
Yeah, that's great. I'll see it there. The other thing that I would say too is in the spirit of like you guys tell us, any suggestions that you have about other things that you'd like to see in the app, certainly we're all ears for that too. So you could either do help@Regrid, or you could hit me up directly at nick@regrid.com, and you'll hit my inbox personally.
And then if I can, just to finish this thought too, because I don't think I got it out, but it's something that we've been talking about a lot, just so people know our passion and the ambition with this. We really want this to be a widely popular app that serves many millions of people who want a convenient way to stay in touch with land and understand not only current land situations, but the change that happen over time. And that's what we're trying to do. So if you want to give us feedback and you're trying to think about like, where are these Regrid folks going? Like, I want to help them with some input. I see what they want to do. Like, we think that this belongs on everyone's phone. That's what we're trying to do. And to give you a comparable on that, where you're like, what does that mean? We talk a lot about apps like Shazam, Picture This, Night Sky, apps that are on my phone that help me very quickly identify something that would otherwise be invisible. I don't necessarily use it every single day, but I always want it there when I want to use it. And these apps are really good at telling you when there's new things that you should be aware of. And so we want to be in that category that really deserves and belongs on everyone's phone. So I share that because I want to put our ambition, our desire out there into the universe on this stuff. And if you're looking to give feedback and you're like, what would really help me? I hear what you're saying, guys, but if I really was going to use it like that, like maybe consider this. That's what we want. We're thirsty for it. That's what we're working hard to do. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. With that, I think we can wrap this up. Please visit our app page. And, if you haven't already, download the app and give us your feedback. We're confident you're going to love it.
Thank you, Sahana. Thank you, Nick. And thank you, team. We have so many people that worked on this on the team. Seth and Meg and Richelli and Bill and Larry and just the whole host. I almost hate saying thank you individually, but you need to do it because it's like, we miss everybody at the edge. So
labor of love.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, you, everyone. Guys. Talk to you all soon.
See you.
Bye, guys.